What's that, bud? The Lincoln Summer Sales event is on now with exclusive offers? Oh, so you want to feel the wind pouring through the available open panoramic vista roof on a road trip? And spend the afternoon beachside hanging out on the back of the spacious Lincoln Splitgate? Okay, I'll schedule a Lincoln test drive today, right before your vet appointment. Visit your local Lincoln retailer or learn more at Lincoln.com.
Amazon Health AI presents Painful Thoughts.
I can't stop scratching my downtown. Yeah, but I'm not itching to go downtown and tell a receptionist I'm here to talk about my downtown. Some things you'd rather type than say out loud.
There's no question too embarrassing for Amazon Health AI. Chat your symptoms and get virtual care 24/7. Healthcare just got less painful.
Welcome to Quiet Riot B-Side, the companion show where we flip the record and dig a little deeper into the stories behind our Thursday news and politics chat. I'm Kenny.
And I'm Naomi, and here on the B-Side, you'll find the tracks that deserve a closer listen.
And I'm Alex here with my anti-static microfiber cloth, clearing the dust away to keep everything in the groove and make sure we don't skip stuff. Now, yesterday, we focused on the new Labour cabinet, so it's only fair today that we shine a light on the opposition. Sunshine, they say, is the best disinfectant, but there are times when a light tan does not feel quite enough of an antiseptic measure.
And boy, does Reform UK need some Dettol on top of the sunshine. From dark money to inheritance tax and even the language on leaflets, today we want to help expose the shadowy figures who've been helping to elevate Nigel Farage.
So we are handing the microphone to one of the most persistent thorns in Nigel Farage's side. Josiah Mortimer is chief reporter at Byline Times, and for the best part of a decade, he's been digging into the money, the machinery, and the contradictions behind Reform UK long before the rest of the press decided it might just be worth a look. Welcome back, Josiah.
Thanks.
From the party's donor list to Farage's own register of interests, Josiah has been building a body of work that treats Britain's likely next Prime Minister, quote, not as a hero of our time, but as a subject for some actual scrutiny. So today we're going to be getting into all of what that reporting adds up to.
You were given £5 million by a crypto billionaire. Sorry?
No one cares. Apart from the media, no one cares. No one cares at all.
It's very clear, Mr. Farage, you've got lots of generous benefactors. You could give this money back.
Well, Boris Johnson got a gift from the same person.
Will you give this money back?
Will you give your salary to charity? How about that?
Well, there's £5 million donation, right?
Shouldn't even be in the public domain. Shouldn't even be in the public domain. I will need protection until the day that I die. And that is my intention. That is what it's for. And it means, frankly, I can get on with my job and not worry about the long term.
Nigel Farage, please, what has happened to this £5 million gift?
With all due respect, what's it got to do with you?
Most people think of a gift as, I don't know, a bottle of champagne, a box of chocolates, not £5 million. Do you understand why most of us find it absolutely impossible to believe that someone who lives on the other side of the world, no matter how much he loves Brexit, and I don't think anyone loves it more than you and me, that they would go, you know what, Nige, love you, here's £5 million, no strings attached. Do you understand why that, frankly, is not believable?
I think you'll find he voted in Hampshire, so I think you'll find that's where home, actually. You know, I had 5 of these when I was in Brussels. 5 fraud investigations into me when I was an MEP. I mean, you know, they came round on an annual basis.
So, Mr. Farage, how much of that money have you spent?
Look, it's literally none of your business. If I've given it to charity, but the truth is, I haven't. I know what it's there
You haven't
for.
spent any of it?
It's none of your business.
I think it is the public's business to know.
No, it's not
what...
the public's business.
Any candidate to be Prime Minister banked a secret cheque for £5 million.
I'm sorry, why is it secret?
Well, you didn't reveal it. It was revealed by the
I?
newspaper you'd taken £5 million.
Why should I? This was given to me on an unconditional basis, completely unconditional basis, but frankly, it was given as a reward for campaigning for Brexit for 27 years. It's an unconditional gift. I can spend it on Ferraris if I wish to. All right?
Are you spending it on Ferraris or are you spending it on your security?
None of your business. I wasn't in politics.
You're telling me you weren't discussing becoming an MP?
I wasn't in politics.
I interviewed you about it, Mr. Farage.
Yeah.
We did a 40-minute interview about whether you might become a member of Parliament.
And as you well know, it was a very, very difficult decision. So what? Do you know what people in Clacton say? Good luck to you, mate.
It's an unconditional gift. I can spend it on Ferraris if I want. That'd be entirely up to me.
You've had some difficult questions about your own funding, £5 million for security.
We'll talk about that any other time you like. Number one, I wasn't in politics. Number two, I don't believe there's anything in the rules that says I had to declare it. Number three, of course, it is being investigated by standards, so perhaps I'd better not say too much. I'm utterly confident. I've got good lawyers, good accountants. I've done nothing wrong in any way at all. We're entirely confident.
How much has been spent?
I bought a cup of coffee this morning. Was that from that money or from what I earned from GB News? Or these are ridiculous questions.
No. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. It's an unconditional gift. I can spend it on cars if I want to. It's entirely up to me. And people inherit vast sums of money and all sorts of things happen in life.
He's not your dad. You didn't inherit it.
People inherit money.
He's a crypto billionaire living on the other side of the planet.
I'm sorry. I know I'm not going to answer that deliberately. Willfully. No one cares. They care if you're a crook, which I'm not.
We're going to be walking through a few of Josiah's recent investigations, starting with Reform's attempt to amend the elections bill in a way that could have jailed candidates for using Gaelic, Irish or Cornish on their leaflets, and the party's rather tangled scramble to explain it away after. Then we'll turn to the widening questions around Farage's personal finances, from that undeclared $5 million crypto donation to his relationship with convicted fraudster George Cottrell and the 5 separate referrals now sitting with the Standards Commissioner. We're going to be asking Josiah the what, the when and the why of it all, and we'll take a look at the troubled firms that handed Reform hundreds of thousands of pounds while apparently teetering on the brink of collapse. But we'll also zoom out because the through line here is bigger than the single story. What happens when a party runs on grievance and populism while its own house is far from being in order? Josiah, let's start at the beginning. You've been reporting on Farage's finances and network for close to 10 years, mostly to the sound of tumbleweed, as you put it. Why have the rest of the press suddenly started to pay a little bit of attention?
Yeah, we call it the great noticing at Byline Times. Oh, hang on, there's something slightly fishy going on here. And they've all seemed to notice this at once. I do find it baffling. Some of this stuff about George Cottrell, actually it was before my time at Byline Times. Much of this came out. We were reporting he was the de facto treasurer of the Brexit Party back in the day. He's been a close confidant of Nigel Farage for years. He was arrested for wire fraud and dozens of other charges while he was actually with Nigel Farage and Richard Tice in the US. And it seems has only, kept up those connections and indeed, if the allegations are correct, been funneling.
So how does it feel when another bigger media outlet gets in on your act? Is it a compliment? Is it relief? Or is it a bit like, oh, for God's sake, why are they getting the glory when actually we've been doing the hard yards?
It's a mixture of emotions, I won't lie. No, I think it's excellent that Reform are now getting a lot more scrutiny. Better late than never, with investigative journalism. Sometimes there's not enough of it, so let 1,000 flowers bloom. It feels like we've sort of been building a bit of the backstory behind some of these scandals. And then it sometimes takes a slightly larger outlet to sort of pick that up. And then the other major outlets and broadcasters go, oh, hang on, the Times has covered it. Now this is something we can get behind.
Or do they just skirt around the issue?
Often they will try very hard not to give credit. With all due respect and credit where credit's due, the Times and Sunday Times unveiling the $5 million secret donation to Nigel Farage from Christopher Harborne before the last general election. That was new. There's lots of this stuff that is new. I think there's
enough to go around.
There's enough to go around.
There's enough.
There's plenty of scandal
to pick
up.
I remember us doing an episode the week that the largest ever donation was unveiled in a big press event in the city by Farage. And we were sitting here going, why are the same people who lost their shit over Starmer getting eyeglasses and suits are not asking what this person is buying for that money?
best of my knowledge, and I've done quite a bit of digging to try to find evidence, Nathan Gill never said anything while being bribed by a Kremlin stooge about Russia that Nigel Farage hasn't also said. And, I mean, if that's not the mother of all question marks, not for a minute suggesting that Nigel Farage has accepted bribes from a Kremlin stooge.
8 MEPs in total
Now
have
being
made
looked at.
the exact same statement.
But that was following a script, so they're being investigated for it. But if you were just to look at the spirit of what is said, and some of the lines like poking the Russian bear or blaming the invasion of Crimea or the invasion of Ukraine on NATO or the European Union, given Farage's prominence in the polls at the moment, I find it extraordinary that nobody else is joining those particular dots together, or even simply asking him whether Nathan Gill ever said anything he disagrees with about Russia. That you can have that for nothing.
And mine is related to that.
Okay.
My story that really should be a very big story and isn't, is about this £9 million donation from a crypto person. A crypto person with a stake in the platform currently being accused of helping Russia basically bypass sanctions, by the way. So we have right now the story about Nathan Gill. We have Nigel Farage's past when it comes to expenses. He's been sanctioned twice by the European Parliament. There are questions about his Clacton expenses, big questions about how he bought the house in Clacton, who paid for that. That all seems to have gone away. His relationship with accounting has been a complicated one, I think I can say that. And at the same time, you have this story about bribes, and at the same time, you have this story about American dark money openly saying that it's trying to influence our elections. And up pops this crypto guy that hands over £9 million that effectively rescues reform, which is hugely overextended and was really struggling to fundraise.
I mean, they've only in that quarterly return where we were able to find out about the £9 million donation, the other donation totals are 1 million.
Yeah.
So they've got 10 million, of which 9 has come from one guy.
Yeah, and the other one from the other guy, the property guy. And so you have that. You have Nigel Farage suddenly making loads of statements about crypto, even criticizing the Bank of England for trying to introduce regulation in the late summer. And at the same time, you have an environment in which journalists have been apoplectic about anyone in Labour accepting so much as a tin of beans from a Labour peer. And the question that is foremost in everyone's mind every time that happens is, what influence is that person buying from Labour by giving Keir Starmer a pair of eyeglasses? And so that's the background, and you have this guy turn up and give 9 million quid to Nigel Farage, and I have not seen a single journalist say, what influence is that money buying, considering he's ahead in the polls at the moment? I find that so strange that I find it impossible not to then start to construct conspiracies
in your own head,
and say that, well, it must be because people don't want to know, because people are actively promoting this person right now, and so they won't report on stories that go against that objective.
And, you know, last year, Christopher Harborne, based in Thailand, donated, I think it was £12.5 million to reform. He was making the biggest donations ever seen. And it was kind of, a lot of it was met with just a shrug of the shoulders. And, you know, the same for others based abroad as well. There was never sort of any real reckoning that so much of Reform UK's, you know, this pro-sovereignty party's funding was coming from overseas. It is encouraging, I think, that there is this great noticing happening. I think actually partly it's down to the press really does tend to move as a pack.
Yes.
And they have scented blood with
and if they're
reform's
struggling
many
to get
scandals.
out of Burnham, then they've got to get their fix somewhere.
Indeed, I think they sense that the tide is slightly turning on reform. I think a lot of these newspapers and pundits, they have a sort of long-standing affiliations, connections for the Conservative Party.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they do wish that it was kind of revived.
Oh, yeah,
and
the
balanced.
Murdoch titles are definitely out of Kemi now, aren't they?
There is something else that these other newspapers have got that Byline Times probably doesn't do, and that's big legal budgets and KCs, multiple KCs at the end of the phone. How much of the work that you do has a handbrake applied to it because there are risks or there are elements of the story that you simply cannot publish because you don't have the legal firepower to take a chance?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to be quite gung-ho at Byline Times, which is perhaps maybe not very wise. No, I think it's wise. We tend to go for it, but we do obviously, at any one time, there tends to be probably 3 legal consultations underway. If we've got a story, we like to get it out there if we believe it's important and needs to be told. So
sometimes you're churning out 3 a day, Josiah. I mean, listeners, I can't impress upon you enough, how much of a machine Josiah is at doing this. I can barely keep pace with the numerous brilliant investigations that Byline are pushing out.
Quiet, Riot. Traditional home security only alerts you after a break-in, and that's too late. Simply Safe is changing that.
Stop. This is Simply Safe. Police are on the way.
We don't just alert, we stop crime before it starts. Simply Safe, plan starting around $1 a day. Save 50% on your new system with professional monitoring at simplysafe.com/Spotify or with promo code Spotify.
Outdoor deterrence requires a Simply Safe Active Guard outdoor protection plan starting at $49.99 a month. Visit simplysafe.com/licenses for alarm license information. Tennessee 2012.
Kenny, I think you really want to ask about the language one.
Because, I'm a Highlander who I've lived in Wales. I'm now not too far from the Cornish speakers. Let's look at the language ban that was mentioned at the top of our show. Reform's amendment, if we're right, would have meant up to 6 months in jail for somebody using Gaelic, Irish or Cornish on election material. When you put it to Reform, they gave you 3 different explanations in short order. Do you want to talk us through what happened there?
Yeah, sure. So I was just whiling away some time reading through hundreds of amendments for the representation of the People Bill.
He's a cool dude, guys.
I was sunning on a beach. No, I wasn't.
You are absolutely the right place.
You were in the right company.
And I spotted, I was looking out for what Reform were kind of putting forward because they've been complaining about, caps on foreign donations. And I thought, well, what are you proposing to reform elections? And their proposal, it was to ban any language that wasn't English or Welsh from being used in election literature.
Kind of them to allow Welsh.
I know it's almost like they're the official opposition in Wales and want to form government there. But so I thought, well, hang on. Obviously, this was meant to target Urdu and Punjabi and other Asian languages. But I thought they've kicked themselves in the face there. So I thought, well, let's have a look. And so I went to Scottish and Cornish and Irish organisations, and I said, have you seen this? Look, let's be clear. This motion talked about prison sentences for those using languages that weren't those in Scotland and in Northern Ireland. I have to correct you slightly, Kenny, because I went to Reform, as I do with all of my Reform stories, and as usual, I was completely ignored. We have to get all our responses from Reform from other journalists most of the time. So a fellow journalist at an Irish publication called The Journal got in touch, having picked up our initial story, and said, we've had this from Reform. Reform basically, they went through several different stages. First, it was kind of like the stages of grief. First, denial. They said, no, that's not what it does at all. It doesn't ban Gaelic. It doesn't ban Irish. It doesn't ban Cornish. And they said, well, how comes you're going to imprison people in Scotland and in Northern Ireland? Because that's exactly what your motion says. So they says, that was an error. That was inputted there by the Commons authorities, by the table officers. Now, bargaining indeed. So I talked to several MPs. Do they do this? No, the table office doesn't do this. If they're going to insert something, they will tell you about it and they'll make it very clear. So, and then they went back. This journalist went back, and I think after a brief pause, the Reform press officer came back and said, Yeah, if and when this bill does return, we're probably going to amend the amendment and make clear that Gaelic, Cornish. Actually, no, they just said that Gaelic was Scottish Gaelic was not going to be banned. So it leaves Cornish. I'm from Cornwall. Still, kind of banned under this policy. It would also ban parties like Mebby and Kerno from existing.
Because their name is written in Cornish.
Indeed. And previously, of course, Sinn Féin probably would have been banned as well. It'd be like the
Thatcher days.
Alva, the Scottish party.
Alva, exactly. So obviously, they just hadn't thought this through. They thought, how can we attack these Asian languages that we're targeting? They were so angry about being used in the Gorton and Denton by-election. And actually, it seems like it's backfired.
30p Lee barely speaks English half the time. I mean, it's a bit rich coming from that lot.
But I think it could really, not to go on about Cornwall too much, but I think it could really hit them in Cornwall because they're really targeting Cornish, the 6 Cornish seats. And actually, if you say, look, you're not allowed to use Kernoak, the Cornish language, people don't really speak it, but they have an attachment to it. The idea that it would be banned at all from being used in literature, I think just really rubs people up the wrong way.
I'm sure it's already on a lot of Lib Dem literature focused leaflets down in Cornwall now.
I'm sure.
Exposing them on this. This saying goes, always follow the money, Josiah. So on that, I think I've counted it correctly. There are now 5 referrals to the Standards Commissioner covering 4 separate issues related to Nigel Farage and Reform UK. For listeners who have lost track, can you just quickly recap what each one actually concerns and what you think carries the most risk for him within them?
Yeah, so this all started a couple of months ago with the revelations that Christopher Harborne, who we've just discussed, donated, or gifted, I should say, 5 million to Nigel Farage before the 2024 general election. That's one of the referrals that's underway, and indeed being investigated by the Standards Commissioner. Since that time, there have been many more allegations that have emerged, as we know.
At the time of recording. There could be a few more by the time the show goes out.
Indeed, racing to keep on top of them all. Others relate to Nigel Farage allegedly not correctly declaring properties that he owned. We had a tip-off a while ago from a reader saying they'd complained to the Parliamentary Standards Commission about this last year, that he hadn't declared a property in Tandridge, I think it was. And the Standards Commissioner kind of shut them down. So I think they're a little bit cautious that, perhaps that won't go anywhere. There's also the allegations of secret financial support from George Cottrell, as we said, convicted fraudster and close Farage confidant before the 2024 election as well. I think that's under consideration by the Standards Commissioner. Of course, that's all been paused now that Farage has called this by-election. He's hoping that will kill it dead. But if he's re-elected, they'll all be rekindled. Now, I should say any one of these allegations, if they are investigated properly by the Standards Commissioner, could result in Farage, if he's re-elected, having to go back to the voters again. Anything longer than a 10-day suspension, he'll be potentially going back to the voters for another mandate.
After which Andy Burnham might call a general election. Just keep the fucker having
keep those votes coming.
Just keep the fucker having to go back to Clacton for re-election until they get rid of him.
And there's also fresh allegations about George Cottrell's mother, who's donated large sums to Reform, and who the true source of those funds are. There's been a lot of leaks to The Guardian of financial statements, basically suggesting that the authorities have a lot of questions over these donations.
Because it's always about the original source of funds.
Who's the true source of the funds?
Who's the true source? So this is to try and avoid somebody giving money to a friend or relative, and then that friend or relative becoming the donor, so acting as a bit of a clearinghouse, so that there isn't the line of sight from that original person. It's relatively complicated sometimes to unwind some of that. Do you know the mechanism, like how they go about investigating some of that? How do you find out whether, his mum was asked to give the money and he bunged his mum the cash and then she sent it on? I mean, how would they go about unpicking that?
Obviously, you have to tread slightly carefully here with some of these investigations, but I think the National Crime Agency have said that they are looking into some of these sources of funds, and they are working with international partners. So, obviously, if you are hypothetically trying to hide a source of funds, you'll probably use a variety of international accounts. And that, of course, creates headaches for crime investigators having to, deal with other jurisdictions, which perhaps, to pinch a phrase off Michael Gove, might not be as fastidious with, with financial disclosures. So, yeah, I mean, these things will always take some time, but I think in the meantime, it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Quiet, Riot. And then there's your troubled firms investigation, which found that at least 7 companies donating around 485 grand to reform while facing strike-off, liquidation, or having unpaid taxes. If none of it is confirmed as illegal, why does it matter, and what does it say about the loopholes in our donation rules? So even if it doesn't stick on this occasion, is there something that we need to be conscious of?
Yeah, I mean, some of the firms that I was looking into, they were donating large sums to reform while themselves being effectively illiquid, not able to pay their bills. And I think any voter looking at that would think, you should probably try and survive as a business before donating hundreds of thousands to a political party. Some of them was simply they hadn't filed their financial accounts, but actually that is against the law. You need to file these things on time. One company that I've just reported on, Volare Aviation, was recorded as donating £30,000 in private flights to reform. When I asked the company about this, they said, oh, no, it wasn't us that funded the flights. It was our owner, Dustin Dryden, which wasn't recorded like that by the Electoral Commission. So they're kind of taking it whole slightly. Now, the company might not have, the company probably didn't do anything wrong. It's the question over whether reform is actually hiding the true source of some of these donations. So, and I think the question with troubled firms in particular is, what is the purpose of giving money if you're a failing firm? What are you trying to achieve? Any voter kind of looking at it will raise a few eyebrows.
Yeah. You see, I'm old enough to remember quite a lot of attention on conservatives receiving donations via the wives of Russian oligarchs whose money was considered not entirely clean in the UK, and also Robert Jenrick getting personal donations from a gym firm that didn't seem to be doing any business. And so there is a sort of natural evolution to all this. You can kind of see where people started testing the limits of what's legal. And since no one took any notice and no one did anything about it, they pushed a little further.
Yeah, and the thing that baffles me about some of these stories is, I went to the Electoral Commission saying there's these companies that are donating to political parties. They've not filed their accounts. Some of them were listed as legally dormant, so not trading. Now, the law is supposedly clear and says to donate as a company to a political party, you have to be, the phrase is, carrying on business in the UK.
That's right, yeah.
So I said, how can this be a legal donation if a dormant company is donating to a party?
Because by definition, they are not carrying on business.
Indeed. And the Electoral Commission came back and said, no, you can be carrying on business if you're a dormant company. Now, of course, we're getting into the weeds here, but I just think, the law is clearly not caught up. There's so many loopholes. It's effectively
maybe you're about to wake up. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe next year you will file accounts.
Yeah, I don't know whether they're sort of afraid of enforcing the law properly. They're under resourced. But anyway, the long and short, and I suppose for a sort of good news vibe, is that the law is probably changing on this soon, so that any company that donates to a political party will have to prove they've made as much money that they're donating as profit over the past 5 years. At the moment, they don't have to do any of this. They can be £10 million in debt, and they can give £20 million to a political party. But Andy Burnham may well end up rewriting some of this. The legislation's been paused. It's coming back probably in September. Perhaps it will give Andy Burnham a chance to put in proportional representation, which
do you get the feeling that he's keen on this?
So interestingly, we had a tip off from a reader a little while ago who'd been in correspondence with Andy Burnham while he was running for leader, and they said, "Do you support a cap on donations to political parties?" And he came back and said, "Yes, I do."
And then the unions went, "Are you sure?"
Indeed, yeah. A lot of reformers were pulling their hair out at some of those responses from unions. I think the state of our democracy is kind of pretty existential at the moment. And so, but it does sound like he's in favour of donation caps. And that was looking like a bit of a spat between the Starmer government and people like Stella Creasy. So I think he's probably more open to that. No election law should look like it's targeting any one political party, and it shouldn't. But they should be doing this kind of stuff because it's right and because it increases trust.
Quiet, Riot. Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Quiet, Riot.
Well, I've got a big decision to make. You know, I mean, life's pretty good for me at the moment. I'm enjoying being a broadcaster. I won Broadcaster of the Year last year in the UK. Yeah, life's good.
All right.
You know, when you're in politics, and people laugh at this, but there's no money in politics. No money if you're straight.
Right.
If you're corrupt, there's probably money
but
in
it's
politics.
finding a straight politician.
But there's no money in politics. You know, I had 4 kids to bring up, dependents, etc. So for the first time in 30 years, I'm earning good money. I'm enjoying life. I don't have quite the same level of vitriol.
Right.
We just heard Farage telling a podcast a few years ago, quote, "There's no money in politics," hastily adding, "if you're straight." Do you, Josiah, read the pattern you've uncovered as just like a straightforward hypocrisy, or is it more systemic in terms of what is going on about how the whole operation is funded, how his whole career has been funded?
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of money worship going on. You know, I don't think it's a coincidence that he said that and then he decided to stay on at GB News for £1 million odd a year, take on 15 other jobs, and at a similar time receive a $5 million gift from a political associate. You know, I think he is quite money driven, and I think that can lead to big problems really when politicians have that in their sights. Traditionally, politics, perhaps this is misty-eyed, but has been seen as more of a public service. The kind of second jobbing has not been on the levels that we've seen with
and
Nigel
again,
Farage.
drawing parallels with across the Atlantic, you know, we've traveled in the space of 30 years or 40 years from a president who had to put a peanut farm into a trust because it was seen as absolutely unseemly to have that kind of interest, to a president that sells, you know, memorabilia.
Who's made nuts the centre of his presidency, hasn't he?
Who has
being nuts.
Who literally has a gift shop in the White House. And so, again, I would say that that's the flow of which way politics is going. And you can't fail to notice it. So we either do something about it because we don't think it's the right direction, or we don't.
Yeah, and I think too much of British politics has relied on this sense of the good chaps theory of government, right? It's like there aren't too many rules on political funding.
You were going to say there aren't too many good chaps.
Well, no, that is the problem.
There's not too many rules, but
risk.
we expect people to sort of, just to not take the piss, basically. And I think when you have someone come along who
illegally prorogues Parliament,
indeed, or someone who comes along who just pays no heed to those rules and thinks, the whole system needs to be brought crushing down, then they can take advantage of that. And, I think they have seen that in the US, and I think we're potentially at risk of seeing that in the UK as well. So I think there's a bit of there's certainly an urgent moment now for political reform. And I think, the risks are pretty severe if the government misses those opportunities.
So on a tangential topic then, Josiah, you've described reform as being Farage's political plaything. I prefer the phrase political profit centre, but they both do equally heavy lifting, I think.
Man of the PayPal.
Links not in the show notes, listeners. And he's had, 1, 2, 3 by-election defeats in a row. if the scrutiny does eventually catch up with them, please, what do you think that Reform UK actually looks like without Farage at the top?
I don't think they know the answer to that question themselves, but I think we have hints of it from before Nigel Farage was leader of Reform UK, which is when Richard Tice led it for a time. And, they were polling around 12%, something like that. I think
But that's maybe because of Richard Tice. I mean, he's like a black hole of charisma. He actually sucks in any positive voter attention, disappears into a void.
Indeed, yeah. So, will it go back to Richard Tice after? I'm sure there'll be a power struggle. I'm sure it'll be rats in a sack. I'm sure Zia Youssef has ambitions to be leader of the party.
And Jenrick, for sure.
Jenrick, for
and
sure.
Jenrick,
Yeah.
indeed. So, there will definitely be many battles to come, but I think they all will kind of struggle to match Farage's, I hate to say it, but charisma.
Yeah.
And, Jenrick, does he really exude the same sort of man of the people vibe, however untrue that is?
Postcard.
He really does think that he does, which is, I think, the tragedy of Robert Jenrick. Like, he thinks that voters could look at him and not see the shark eyes.
Not go.
Yeah, I find it really strange how politicians don't seem to have any self-knowledge of, how relatable they are. It's always kind of baffling
there
to
are
me.
people in politics with the hide of a rhinoceros, like they're so thick-skinned, they're impervious to criticism, and they have this enormous black spot about how they're viewed. And I put Liz Truss very firmly in that category. But I think also Jenrick.
Yeah.
Potentially useful.
But do you think at the same time that there is an understanding that while they don't know what life is after Farage, there is also a hint of a suspicion now that Farage has taken them as far as he can, that there is a ceiling there and they've hit it and they're coming back down of it. And so what's in the gulf between those two things?
Yeah, I also get the sense that he doesn't really want to be Prime Minister. And then now, as they get closer to a potential other general election,
Trump story,
I mean, maybe he's actually terrified of that prospect. I think another thing, with the likes of Jenrick is that I expect that there's a lot of antipathy from Reform members to these former Conservative cabinet ministers who, in the eyes of many Reform members, screwed up the country and are now hoping that everyone forgets about that, including their own new party members. So I imagine there'd be a little bit of hostility to Jenrick as a sort of comeback king. But yeah, I do think Farage isn't as keen on the top job as he may pretend.
Yeah, it does seem to be piling up on top of him. And what you said about him being money driven, it feels like when that clashes with being leader of Reform, I sense Farage would choose money. Like if he could find a position where he becomes the big influence of the far right, but also without any scrutiny coming into who gives him what money, he would take that.
Exactly. If you're someone like Farage, why would you want to be an MP? You have responsibility with a lot more scrutiny. He wants power without responsibility. And, in his resignation speech in Clacton, he talks constantly about all the other jobs he could be doing. It was almost like a sort of a cry for help from across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Please
hey,
go
I'm
and
here.
do them. Yeah.
Talking of cries for help, who's got the call to action today?
You got to go and subscribe to Byline Times. You've got to follow Josiah's reporting.
Oh, that's a good one.
Share all of his content on socials. The links are going to be in the show notes to all of that and more.
Riot. And now it's the highlight or lowlight of the week when Alex dons his galoshes and braves the right-wing swamp to find pockets of particularly vexing methane poo. It's time for Wokey Dokey.
Wokey Dokey.
Today we are on well-trodden ground and very much with the same theme of this B-side. New Norfolk PCC vows crackdown on woke policing, reports Henry Durand of the Eastern Daily Press. Now, there is nothing particularly novel about any sort of effort to promote equality or celebrate diversity in any context being seen as woke and therefore terrible, and I will give you one guess as to which party this newly elected police and crime commissioner belongs to. Although there is something particularly noxious about Reform UK's Colin Sutton, who is also the party's police and crime advisor, doing this as his main and only announcement on his very first day in the job. It seems that the only people obsessed with DEI are the people tilting at that windmill.
Yeah.
And there is also something particularly icky in knowing that this man was a Met Police Detective Chief Inspector until very recently, who presumably held these views back then and simply allowed them quietly to influence his priorities, pushing to the bottom of the pile anything that seemed woke to him. But I digress. He made his remarks, the Eastern Daily Press informs us, after an investigation found that Norfolk and Suffolk constabularies hold more than 100 EDI-related training resources between them. Remember that figure and that weird language. We will come back to it. Apparently, the force's diversity training, I quote, is a good place to start my Norfolk PCC career. Mr. Sutton went on to say that, I quote, the state of policing generally is very good, but my desire is to try to make the public and police reconnect with each other, and things like this are just not helpful to that.
I'm sure.
Okay, it's a view. The only problem is that in that same diatribe, Mr. Sutton criticised police forces participating in pride events, which seems confusing as participation in community celebrations seems a pretty ideal opportunity for the public and police to reconnect with each other. Unless, of course, there are parts of the public that Mr. Sutton does not want police to connect to.
Yeah, exactly.
So far, so yawn, right? Today, diversity is woke. So what's new? But the reason I wanted to bring this example today is because it seemed a perfect one to demonstrate how this whole toxic biosphere works in tandem. Sarah Taylor was elected as a Labour PCC only 2 years ago in a surprise result, since Norfolk tends to lean Conservative.
Yep.
Now, when the government announced that it would be abolishing PCCs because it found them to be costly and ineffective, and no one frankly voted for them, she announced that she's quitting the party in protest. But she stayed on as PCC. She finally resigned from that position for personal reasons just after the local elections. But because PCCs are mandated by statute, even though they are being abolished, Norfolk had to go back to the polls for a vote that would cost up to £2 million just weeks after the county council elections. Hence, a perfect opportunity is created by Labour for the first Reform UK PCC to come in and do as much damage as possible before his position is retired in a couple of years, winning, get this, on a 17% turnout.
Wow.
Of course, just like a green fly is never far from a turd, Farage held a rally in Norfolk to celebrate and use the opportunity, or so the paper tells us, to throw his full weight behind Norfolk's new Police and Crime Commissioner's bid to clamp down on so-called woke policing. Cue Nick Timothy, the Tory Shadow Justice Secretary, supporting this and saying the growth of DEI training in the police, justice system and wider public sector is alarming. Much of this so-called training, in scare quotes, is pure left-wing ideology. Let me remind you that Nick Timothy was Theresa May's closest advisor during her taking over as Tory leader. Now, Theresa May was noted for her rather incongruously progressive view that stop and search had gone too far and there was institutional bias in the police. And if Nick Timothy didn't write some of those speeches, he certainly approved them. Never one to be left behind, Shadow Home Secretary and stunt double to the Muppet Beaker popped up to describe the training, gulp, as a catalogue of insanity and, gulp, catastrophic waste of, gulp, money. Guess what job Chris Philp had for 2 years, the last 2 years of the Tory government in the Sunak administration?
Yeah.
Policing minister. He is literally the guy in the hot dog costume, shaking his fist and promising to find whoever did this. And then the final piece of the puzzle, remember that research that identified this colossal waste? It turns out it was a very fortuitously timed information request by the Telegraph. And that peculiar language about 100 diversity resources, well, if you were interested enough to scroll all the way down the page, past the gold bullion and penis enlargement ads, and the siren calls of "you won't believe how much cellulite has what minor celebrity," in the last couple of paragraphs, you would find a statement from the police spokesperson that says the training in question is part of their internal learning program in accordance with professional standards, and that list of resources includes short videos or a page on the intranet, and only 3 of the 100 items are mandatory training for new officers. They are mainly voluntary bits and bobs like FAQs and how-to pages that have to do primarily with the duty of the police as a large employer and nothing to do with policing. In short, like all things objected to as woke, it's not just misconceived, it's not even real.
Thank you, Alex. Listeners, as ever, if you find someone getting all heated over a particularly funny bit of wokery, do share it with us on Blue Sky or by email at the usual address.
And that is the end of today's B-Side show. Our huge thanks to Josiah for joining us once more.
Thanks so much.
And an even bigger thank you to everyone at home for tuning in. Our live show is about 3/4 sold out, so if you want to join us on the 30th of July at the Leicester Square Theatre, go grab your ticket while you still can. The link is in the show notes. And don't forget, if you're coming along and you're a backer at ko-fi.com/quietroadpod, drop us an email and we'll let you know which pub to find us in for some post-match chat.
We'll be back on Sunday, of course, with our slower takes on the week's big breaks.
We love you all very, very much.
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production from Cooler Heads, written and produced by Andreou, Naomi Smith, and Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta, artwork by Simona Canello, and edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot.
Is everyone okay? What happened? Someone drove a hot dog-shaped car through the window.
Driver's gone. Somebody call the cops. We need to find that driver.
They could have killed someone. Whose car is this?
Yeah, come on. Whoever did this, just confess. We promise we won't be mad.
What? That's clearly your car.
Wrong.
Someone call the police.
Yeah, that's one idea. Or we could work as a team, find out whoever did this and punish him ourselves.
But you're wearing an actual hot dog costume.
You know what's driving me nuts? It could literally be any one of us. No, it couldn't. You're dressed like a hot dog. You know, I don't have to sit here and be insulted like this.